They told me the well was dead. They told me it was just a circle of stones, a mouth that swallowed rain and never gave it back. But on the first night I slept on that land, the land my father left me with more debts than memories, I woke to the sound of a bucket scraping against something that wasn't stone, a metallic cough, a note like a bell smothered by dirt. And I swear to you, though I had nothing then but a cracked leather belt and a Bible with missing pages, I heard that well breathe. Dawn came cold and mean. The barn leaned like an old drunk against the horizon. The cornfields were ghosts, and the wind felt like it remembered better men who failed here. My boots sank into the mud as if the earth itself wanted me swallowed. I walked to the well because I am stubborn, or cursed, or both. The rope was coiled where I'd left it, frayed like the threads of my luck. I tied it to the old handle, felt splinters bite my palm, and turned. The pulley squealed. Dust rose. Birds scattered. Somewhere a screen door banged in an empty house, which was impossible, because I was the only soul for miles who still called this place home. When the bucket finally thumped the bottom, the rope shivered. I held my breath. Nothing. Then the faintest clink, like a coin tapped on a table. My father's voice, a memory in the wind, told me to mind my hands and keep my prayers close. My hands have always come first. Prayers? Not always. But that day I whispered one anyway and began the lift. The bucket was heavier than water. It fought me coming up, like something down there hated the sky. Halfway, the rope jerked hard enough to skin my knuckles. I held, teeth clenched, and pulled until my shoulders burned like stoves. When I finally hauled it over the lip, mud slopped out in black ropes and a smell rose that tasted like pennies in rain. And there, pressed in the muck like a sleeping eye, was metal. Not rusted farm junk, not a hubcap or chain. Something old, something carved. I washed it with the little water in my canteen. Lines came up, spiraling, almost like a prayer written by someone who didn't trust words anymore. The piece fit my palm. It was the color of a storm. In the center, a symbol, a cross with a circle at its heart, and around it, tiny notches, as if it had once fit into a bigger secret. That's when the wind died. No birds, no insects, nothing. The farm fell quiet in a way I have only heard at a graveside after the last shovel of dirt. In that silence, the well breathed again, soft, patient, certain, and I understood two things. First, that the land I had inherited was not empty. Second, that the man I had been when I woke, that poor farmer with nothing, was already gone. I turned the object over and felt heat bleed from it into my skin. The world around me sharpened. The splinters in the bucket looked like teeth. The horizon turned to blade. Far off, a dust trail moved along the county road. A truck, someone else coming this way. And with the weight of that metal in my hand, I knew. The secret in that well had been waiting. Not for anybody. For me. I didn't shout. I didn't run. Poverty teaches you to keep quiet when fortune sits at your table, because sometimes it's the wind in a coat. But this wasn't wind. It was weight, history, a key to a door I didn't know existed. My fingers shook and the well breathed. Something was waking to my touch. I looked toward the house. Blistered paint, sagging porch, where my mother said hope can nap if you keep the floor swept. She passed 2 winters back, my father a year later, leaving land, liens, and a last instruction. Listen to this place. It will tell you what it wants. I thought he meant fences and feed. I was wrong. The land spoke another tongue, language of buried things. Sunlight flashed on a windshield. I pocketed the object, reset the bucket, and let the rope hiss into dark. Before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the ground under your feet carried a story older than you? Older than your bloodline? Older even than the barns and wells that dot our towns? That's the feeling I had every morning on that farm. And if you want to walk with me through this story, through the dust, the hunger, the fear, and finally the discovery that turned everything upside down, then stay here. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel, because I promise, this is not just a tale about a farmer. It's about faith, survival, and the kind of miracle that hides in the soil when men are too tired to dig. And don't forget to comment below where you are watching from. I want to know how far this story travels from my forgotten corner of America to yours. Now let's go back to that morning. I was raised in a house where the word enough was never spoken. We never had enough food, enough money, or enough hope. My father worked the land until his back bent like the plows he pushed, and my mother prayed over scraps of bread as if they were banquets. As a boy, I learned early that dreams were luxuries, and luxuries were for other men. When the drought came, it didn't just take our crops, it took our laughter. By the time my father died, leaving me the land, he left behind more empty cupboards than tools. The farmhouse leaned, tired from years of storms. The porch boards creaked like they were whispering their final secrets. Inside, the wallpaper peeled in strips, the smell of mildew stronger than coffee. I had a mattress on the floor, a Bible missing the book of Job, and one cracked plate that had belonged to my mother. That was my kingdom. And though it sounds like misery, I tell you, it was mine. After years working other men's fields, I finally had a piece of earth to call my own. But land without water is just dirt. And the well, oh, the well was supposed to be my lifeline. Everyone said it was dry. That's why the county signed the deed over to me for pennies. Why no one else wanted the cursed stretch of earth. Don't waste your time on it, boy, old Mr. Collins from down the road told me. That well's been empty since your daddy was a child. Still, I tried. Every morning I lowered the bucket hoping for a splash, praying for the weight of water. And every morning, nothing. Until that night, the night the well breathed, and I pulled up not water, but metal. But let me take you deeper into the man I was before the secret came. I was thin as a fence post, hands blistered, face leathered by sun. My boots were patched with wire, my coat older than me. I lived day by day, meal by meal. Some days I'd eat a potato boiled 3 times to stretch its worth. Some nights I went hungry, my belly hollow as the fields. And yet, I was not bitter. I was poor, but I still believed. My mother's faith never left me. She used to say, "The Lord buries treasures where men least expect them." Maybe she meant kindness. Maybe she meant salvation. I never thought she meant an actual treasure. When I found that object in the bucket, I thought first it was a trick of light or a scrap of machinery fallen in years back. But the carvings, the weight, the way the air itself hushed around me, it felt different. And deep down, I knew poverty had finally loosened its grip. Still, fear is a stubborn shadow. I didn't trust it. Riches are not meant for men like me, I thought. Riches come with claws. But curiosity, that's another hunger, and it gnawed louder than my empty stomach. That afternoon I went about chores as if nothing had happened. I mended the fence where the wind had torn it down. I fed the hens, counted the eggs, though they were fewer each week. I walked the land, my land, though every acre seemed to mock me with weeds taller than my knees. All the while, the object pressed in my pocket, heavy as a second heart. As the sun slid down, I sat on the porch, staring at the well. Its stones glowed orange in the dying light. Its shadow stretched long across the yard like a finger pointing west. The wind carried dust, and I thought of my father's voice. Listen to this place. That night I couldn't sleep. The mattress was harder, the air thicker, the crickets louder. My hands kept reaching into my pocket, tracing the lines of the carving. A cross, a circle, marks like teeth around the edge. What did it mean? Who put it there? And why was it waiting for me? I told myself 100 reasons to forget it. Sell it for scrap, toss it back in the well, pretend it never surfaced. But the truth is, I was already bound to it. That farm had chosen me through blood, and that well, I felt, had chosen me through something greater. At dawn, I washed my face with cold water from a rusted basin. My reflection looked older than my 27 years. Tired, yes, but beneath the tiredness, a spark. That object had lit something in me, something my hunger and hardship had almost smothered. The days that followed blurred into work, but the well never left my thoughts. Each time I passed it, I felt its eyes on me. The farm was no longer silent. It was watching, breathing. And I, the poor farmer with nothing, was suddenly at the center of a story I didn't understand. And so, to you watching, wherever you are, whatever corner of the world you call home, remember this: even the most broken land, even the most forgotten man, can carry secrets that change everything. That's what I was about to learn, and it all began with that breath from the well. The third morning after pulling that strange piece of metal from the well, the farm no longer felt like mine. It felt alive, like every gust of wind and every creak of timber carried a message. I had lived through droughts, through storms, through nights when the coyotes cried louder than my own hunger, but never had I felt the land watching me. That morning, it did not just watch, it spoke. I was in the chicken coop spreading what little feed I had left when I heard it again. A sound from the well, carried faintly through the still air. Not the scrape of a bucket this time, not the whisper of rope. It was softer, like a hum, low and steady, rising from the ground itself. The hens froze mid-step, their eyes wide and glassy, their wings twitching. I dropped the tin pail, and the clang echoed across the empty fields like a warning. I hurried out into the yard, boots slipping on the mud, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt since the war. Yes, I'd been drafted once, but fortune or fate sent me back home before I ever fired a shot. That same dread now crawled through me. The well stood at the center of the yard, stones glistening with dew, and the hum grew louder as I approached. I leaned over the rim, peering into darkness. The rope swayed though no wind touched it. And then, clear as a voice at my shoulder, the breathing came again. Slow, patient, not human, not animal, something older. My mouth went dry. I clutched the cross-shaped object in my pocket, and it grew warm, almost pulsing, as if answering the sound below. That night I tried to ignore it. I stoked the fire, boiled a potato, read the Psalms by candlelight, and told myself hunger was making me hear things. But when I blew out the flame and lay in the dark, the hum seeped through the floorboards. It seemed to rise through the very foundations of the farmhouse as though the well was speaking into the bones of the land. Sleep never came. By morning, I was a man possessed. I grabbed my shovel and went back to the well. If the earth was hiding something, I would dig until my arms gave out. I pried loose the stones around the rim, dirt caking my nails, sweat stinging my eyes. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, and my body begged me to stop. But I kept going. With each shovelful, the hum grew louder, clearer, more insistent. It was then that a shadow fell over me. I looked up to see Old Man Collins standing at the fence, his thin frame leaning on a cane. He was a neighbor in name only, half a mile down the road, a man who had watched me with pity since I inherited this cursed land. "You best leave that well alone," he croaked, his voice like gravel dragged on wood. I wiped my brow and kept digging. "Why?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Because your daddy left it shut for a reason," Collins said. "Some things buried want to stay that way." I laughed bitterly. "And some of us buried want a chance to breathe again." He shook his head, eyes clouded with more than age. "You don't understand. That land took men before you. It'll take you too. Don't let the hunger trick you into listening." But hunger had already tricked me. Hunger, and the weight of destiny pressing in my pocket. I told him I would be fine, waved him off, and kept digging until he finally walked away. By dusk, I had unearthed a wooden cover beneath the stones, old and rotted, the grain dark with years of damp. I pried at it with the shovel and it cracked like bones breaking. Beneath it lay a second chamber lined not with rough stones but with bricks carved with the same markings as the object I carried. My heart thudded so loud I thought it would split. The hum became a song then, low, rising, falling, pulling at me like a tide. I leaned closer, and for the first time I saw light. A faint glow deep below, greenish and soft, as though something alive waited in the dark. I dropped the shovel. I fell to my knees. My lips moved in prayer though no words formed. Was this God's work? A curse? A miracle? My father's warning echoed in my ears. Listen to this place. It will tell you what it wants. And the land was speaking now. That night I could not stay inside. I sat by the well under the stars, the cross-shaped piece clutched tight in my hand. The glow below flickered like a lantern, the hum weaving through the crickets and the night wind. And I swore I heard words faint but clear. Come down. Sleep finally took me in the grass, but dreams did not bring rest. I saw fields lush and green, rivers spilling over, barns filled to the brim. I saw my mother smiling, her hands full of bread. I saw my father standing tall again, no debt in his eyes. And then, darkness swallowing it all, the earth cracking open, a flood of light consuming everything. I woke at dawn, heart racing, clothes damp with dew. The well was silent, but the glow lingered. The choice lay before me. Ignore it, cover it back up, return to a life of empty plates and broken fences, or follow it, risk everything, and learn the truth of the land that had chosen me. And as the rooster crowed, I knew the truth. I had already chosen. The morning after the dream, I could no longer pretend I was just a farmer. The soil I walked on carried whispers, and the well in my yard had turned from a dry hole into a doorway. I strapped on my boots, took my shovel and lantern, and stood at the rim, staring into that faint green glow that pulsed below, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. But courage, doesn't come easy to men who've known nothing but loss. I paced the yard a dozen times, telling myself to forget it, to cover the hole and walk away. I thought of my father, of his words, of how maybe he'd known all along that this secret lay under our land. Why hadn't he told me? Why hadn't he gone down there himself? The thought made me wonder whether what I was chasing was a blessing, or a curse too heavy for him to bear. By midday, I gave up trying to resist. I tied the rope tight around the bucket handle, fixed it to the old post, and began lowering myself inch by inch into the dark. The walls pressed in, damp and cold, the carved bricks rough beneath my fingers. The humming grew louder, the glow brighter. Every creak of the rope echoed like thunder. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might snap the line before I reached the bottom. And then, I touched ground. My boots sank into wet clay. The glow came from a crack in the brick wall, faint but steady. I pressed my hand to it, and the object in my pocket vibrated like it recognized its home. But I wasn't alone. A voice called down, rough and sharp. "What in God's name are you doing, boy?" I looked up. Collins again. He'd returned, cane in hand, standing at the edge of my well, peering down with eyes that burned despite their age. "Finding what belongs to me," I shouted back. His voice dropped to a growl. "It don't belong to you. That thing's been waiting, but not for you. You put it back where it came from before it takes more than you're willing to give." His words chilled me, but anger rose just as fast. Men like Collins had land, barns, cattle. Men like me had only dust and debt. If there was a secret here, a treasure, why shouldn't it be mine? I told him to leave me be, but he shook his head, muttering prayers, and limped away. Still, his warning echoed long after he was gone. I pried at the bricks with my shovel, clay crumbling under the pressure until a hole opened wide enough for me to crawl through. On the other side lay a narrow passage, lined with stone older than any I'd seen, carved with the same spirals and crosses as the object. The glow deepened, flickering like firelight but cold to the skin. Fear clawed at me. My breath fogged in the damp air. Every step forward felt like stepping further away from the life I knew. Poor as it was mine. But hunger for answers drove me on. The passage opened into a chamber. I stopped, stunned. The walls glimmered with veins of metal, not gold exactly, not silver, but something between, shimmering with colors that shifted as I moved. At the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, and on it an indentation shaped exactly like the cross and circle object in my hand. My fingers trembled as I pulled it from my pocket. It fit as if carved for it, sliding into place with a click that echoed through the chamber. The hum stopped. For a heartbeat the world held its breath. Then the walls lit up, symbols flaring bright, casting shadows like dancing spirits. I staggered back. My chest tightened. It was no treasure chest, no pile of coins. It was something older, something sacred, something alive. And though my mind raced with questions, one truth cut through everything. This was not built by men like me. As I turned, a noise came from the tunnel. Heavy boots, voices. Not Collins this time, but two men I didn't recognize. Broad-shouldered, dressed in coats too fine for farm work, carrying lanterns that swung with purpose. They stopped at the entrance, eyes narrowing at the sight of me in the chamber. One of them spoke, voice smooth as oil. "Well, looks like the boys found it first." The other spat on the ground. "Doesn't matter. He won't keep it." I froze, shovel in hand, back to the glowing walls. The chamber pulsed around me like it knew I was cornered. The first man stepped closer, smile cold. "Be smart, son. Step away from that stone. What you've touched belongs to us now." My throat went dry. Somehow word had spread. Whatever this secret was, it wasn't unknown. Others had waited, watching, circling like vultures for the day it revealed itself. But something in me hardened then. I was poor, yes. Hungry, yes. But I was not weak. My father had fought this land. My mother had prayed over it. And now it called to me. Not them. Me. I raised the shovel, voice shaking but clear. "This land is mine, and whatever it's hiding is mine too." The men laughed, cruel and certain. But their laughter was swallowed by the sudden roar of the chamber walls, a sound like thunder rolling under the earth. The symbols flared brighter, and the glow poured upward through the cracks, racing back toward the well above. The ground shook. The men stumbled. Dust rained from the ceiling, and in the chaos a thought struck me with the weight of prophecy. The well had not given me a treasure. It had given me a choice. Do I fight for it, Do I claim it? Do I risk everything I am for what lies beneath? Or do I let it go before the secret swallows me whole? The chamber shook, as though the very bones of the earth were waking from a long sleep. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the two men who had cornered me stumbled back, their lanterns swinging wildly. I pressed myself against the pedestal, one hand clutching the stone cross and circle, the other still holding my shovel like it was a sword. The glow surged brighter, wrapping the chamber in shifting waves of green and gold. It felt less like light and more like presence, an intelligence that filled the air and pressed against my chest. The first man cursed, covering his eyes. "Shut it down! Pull it out!" he yelled, pointing at the object on the pedestal. But when I tried to lift it, it wouldn't budge. It had locked itself into the stone as if roots had grown around it. The symbols on the walls blazed, swirling in patterns that seemed to move of their own accord. My heart thundered. My father's words rang again. Listen to this place. And then, the voice. Not heard with ears, but felt in the marrow of my bones. A whisper and a roar all at once. Chosen, tested, bound. The men shouted at me, demanding I step aside, but I could barely hear them. The chamber was no longer a room. It was a cathedral of power. I fell to my knees, eyes wide, tears streaking through the dust on my face. Visions poured into me, fields of gold stretching beyond sight, rivers overflowing with water clear as glass, barns filled with abundance. Then the vision twisted, fire sweeping across plains, men fighting over soil, greed hollowing the land, and finally, silence, a world abandoned, the earth closing its secrets again. I gasped, clutching my chest. The voice pressed one final word into me. Decide. The men lunged. One grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back. I swung the shovel with all my strength, connecting with his lantern. It shattered, flames spilling across the clay. He screamed, stumbling into the wall, but instead of burning, the fire was swallowed by the glowing veins in the stone, absorbed as if the chamber itself was feeding. The second man drew a pistol. The barrel gleamed in the flickering light, aimed square at my chest. My breath caught. Poverty had taught me fear, but it had also taught me stubbornness. I stepped closer to the pedestal, placing my hand fully on the object, ready to defend it with my life. The pistol cracked. The sound split the air, but the bullet never touched me. It hung, suspended inches from my chest, wrapped in light that pulsed from the pedestal. The man's face twisted from triumph to terror. He fired again, and again the bullets froze, caught in midair like flies in amber. His hand trembled, the gun clattering to the ground. And then, the chamber answered. A column of light shot upward through the well, bursting into the sky above. I heard the roof of my barn groan, the chickens scream, the wind howl as if the heavens themselves had opened. The men fled, scrambling back through the tunnel, their screams fading into the dark. I stayed. I couldn't move if I wanted to. The light poured into me, filling every hollow place poverty had carved out. My hunger vanished. My fear dissolved. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. When it finally faded, I collapsed onto the clay, gasping like a drowning man returned to shore. The chamber was quiet now. The glow dimmed to a steady pulse, as if it had given me what it could and was waiting for my next step. I crawled back through the tunnel and hauled myself up the rope. The farmyard above was transformed. The soil glistened damp, though no rain had fallen. The withered corn stalks stood straighter, greener. Even the air smelled different, fresh, alive, like spring after a long winter. I fell to my knees by the well, staring at my hands. They shook, but not from fear, from awe. That night, as I sat on the porch, I saw headlights in the distance. Trucks, more than one, rolling down the county road. Whoever those men were, they weren't finished. They would be back, and they'd bring more with them. But I also knew this. The well had chosen me, not them. Me. The voice had bound itself to me, and the land now pulsed with a secret I could no longer deny. The greatest secret was not gold or jewels. It was life itself, hidden beneath a farm no one wanted. As the trucks drew closer, my father's words echoed one last time, clear and strong. This place will tell you what it wants, and now, it wanted me to fight for it. By the time the trucks rolled into the yard, the night was thick with silence, broken only by the distant rumble of engines. I stood on the porch, hands still dirty, heart still thundering from what I had seen in the chamber below. I knew those men would come back for the secret, and maybe more would follow after them. But I also knew something deeper. This land had spoken. and it had chosen me. They parked at the fence line, doors slamming, voices carrying across the dark, flashlights cut through the fields, bouncing off the barn, off the coop, off the well that now glowed faintly with its own light. The men thought they were coming to take something from me, but you can't steal what isn't yours to begin with. I gripped the railing of the porch and whispered a prayer, words I hadn't spoken with such fire since my mother's last breath. Lord, give me strength to hold what you've given. Let me stand as keeper, not thief. And for the first time I felt the prayer answered, not in silence, but in the steady thrum of the earth beneath my boots. I never told the men what I found that night. Some secrets are not meant to be shouted. They're meant to be guarded. They searched, they threatened, they left in anger when the well yielded nothing to them. Because the truth is, the secret wasn't just in the chamber. It was in me now, in the bond between a man and his land. Seasons passed. The soil turned fertile again. Crops grew tall where weeds once ruled. The hens laid more eggs than I could eat. My table filled. Neighbors came by curious, and for the first time I shared more than stories. I shared food, hope, life. I remained a poor farmer by the world's measure, but inside I carried a wealth greater than gold, gratitude, faith, and the knowledge that the land itself had trusted me to keep its heart beating. And maybe that's the true secret the well revealed. Not treasure you can weigh or spend, not glory you can boast about, but a reminder that sometimes the poorest man carries the greatest responsibility, that miracles are given not to kings, but to the humble, that faith and perseverance can uncover what greed and power will never touch. Now I stand here telling you this story, not because I want fame or recognition, but because maybe you too have a well in your life, a place that looks empty, forgotten, cursed. Maybe you've been told to walk away, to give up, to stop believing. But what if just beneath the surface a secret waits for you, a gift only you are meant to find? Hold fast, dig deep, listen to the ground you stand on, the life you've been given, the whispers that come when the world is quiet. For me it was a farm, a well, and a light in the dark. For you it may be something else entirely. But whatever it is, know this, you are not forgotten. Sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as burdens. Sometimes the poorest farmer inherits the richest secret. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next journey we share here. And before you go, drop a comment below telling me where in the world you are watching from. I'd love to know how far this story travels, because in the end, we are all connected, like roots beneath the soil, sharing the same earth, the same struggles, the same hope. And maybe, just maybe, your well is waiting to breathe too.